Hi everyone, I just want to thank you so much for being here today and allowing me to just share with you a little bit about why I believe that every Christian should go on a missions trip. Before we get started, I'm just going to share with you a little bit of a little story about my background and how I myself was persuaded to believe this. Take it back to elementary school. I was really adamant on always doing local city outreaches, and when people would ask about if I was interested in mission work, I would always tell them no, because I believed there was a need right where we were at. And I was super adamant to the point where even missionaries would come to summer camp and talk to us about it, and they would talk about cannibals, and I'm like, oh, no, that's not me. I'm good where I'm at. And I was really passionate about that for many years. And then when I was in high school, I took a Spanish course, and there was this wonderful group of people in that class, and they were all going on a missions trip, and they would talk about it. It was super exciting. We would practice and get them ready to go. And then about a month before the trip, they all came to me and they were like, hey, we had someone drop and we need you to come on this trip. We all feel like it should be you. And I was like, I'll pray about it out of obligation. But I prayed about it and felt convicted to go. So fast forward a month later, I'm on this trip. I raised the money in that amount of time, and it was just so evident the Lord wanted me there. And while I was on that trip in Guatemala, the Lord completely changed my perspective on why it's important to go on short-term mission trips, and I hope that your mind is changed as well by the end of this presentation. To start out, I'm going to give you a little bit of just stigma/cons about things that people believe about mission trips. And the first is that it's too expensive. I think we've all, been in a place where we've seen people raising a lot of money for mission trips. People don't believe that short-term missionaries can do what long-term can as far as making differences and building impactful relationships and actually making a change. And then finally is that, and this is where I was in, is that people need to help individuals in the U.S. first. And so we're going to tackle a little bit about what those things look like, but I'm going to transition into the benefits and the pros of doing short-term missions. And I want to start with giving a quote from Seth Barnes, which says, "The most successful models of short-term missions emphasize a partnership in which both participants and nationals benefit equally as they develop relationships with one another." So first things first, for why we as Christians want to do short-term missions is because of the Great Commission. It comes from Matthew 28:16-20, and it says, "Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. When Jesus came to them and said, 'All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age.'" This is a clear direction from the Lord for us to go, to physically go and do good and bring people in furthering the kingdom of Christ. So I'm going to show you some ways that it honors Christ. And the first and foremost is it displays a life worthy of the gospel of Christ. As Christians, if we lay dormant and are stagnant in our walk with the Lord and we're not impacting people and impacting the nations, our life is not worthy of the gospel of Christ. It also displays obedience. If the Lord calls us to do something and we don't, we are living life in disobedience. But if the Lord calls us to go and we do, it shows that we are being obedient to the cross. It displays God-honoring discipleship, and Paul really gave good examples of short-term missions himself, even going and visiting churches and displaying the gospel to them and giving them truth and giving them encouragement, and he really exemplified what discipleship looked like. And so for us to be able to go, it does display God-honoring discipleship. And then finally, it expands the kingdom of Christ, bringing people to know him better, to know his name. It expands his kingdom. Next, I want to talk about what it does for others. First, it provides hope to the nations. When we're able to go and impact people and reach out to them in encouragement, it brings them hope. It brings the people just the ability to know that there is a God who loves and who cares for them, and it really changes their entire perspective of life. And then next is the idea of soft hands and calloused hearts, and what that means is however long the short-term trip is, you go, and in that short amount of time, you love people with the full capacity that you have, but you also tangibly are doing things for them, whether that means you're sewing pillows or building fences or tangibly doing something to offer them. And that's kind of the soft heart, callous hand analogy. And then the other thing that people don't think about often is that the encouragement to long-term missionaries is imperative. When these groups come in and can encourage long-term missionaries, it's a fire that they may have lost. And it brings about so much encouragement for why they're there and why they're doing what they do. And oftentimes they don't have people encouraging them, loving on them, writing them notes, or whatever that looks like. And it makes a difference for them as well. And then it's the ability to offer physical needs. I remember one time going on a trip, I took an extra suitcase that was full of clothes from little boys that my neighbor just sent me with. And when I brought it, the woman in the children's home bawled her eyes out because they were in desperate need for those physical needs and the clothing for the boys. They didn't even have underwear to wear. None of the kids did. And I thought it was weird to bring underwear for these children, but they desperately needed it. So it's that ability to offer physical needs. And then create lasting and impactful relationships. I'm still in contact with people from that very first mission trip that I went on when I was 16 years old. And I still am able to encourage them and love on them, and they do the same for me. And then finally, and again, it expands the kingdom of Christ. And the next thing I want to talk about is the benefit for ourselves. And I think this is almost the call to action for me to show you guys, man, this is what it can do for you. And I specifically put this thing last because self is supposed to be last. And all these other reasons we talked about come first and foremost, but there is a lot that a mission trip can do for you as well. First and foremost, you will encounter God's heart. There is no way to be closer to the Lord than impacting His children and the people that He already desperately loves and longs for them to know His name. You will expand your limited perspective. We as Christians, oftentimes, even though we see poverty in the States and we see a lot of bad, there's nothing the same of seeing it in a third world country. It changes your perspective. And realistically, you come back and you're not the same. You'll build lasting partnerships. It's incredible, especially when you go with an organization and you connect with another organization and it creates some sort of partnership. And then even once you come back, you have the ability to know their needs and still meet them with time to come. Whether that's a sports ministry that you continue to send sports items to or whatever that looks like, the lasting partnership has a huge effect on that community. You'll become more grateful. And that's just the reality of it. You come back and you are overwhelmed with gratitude at what the Lord has given you and what He's provided. You will overcome your fears. A lot of people are terrified to present the gospel, even in Walmart or Target, whatever that looks like. They're terrified even when the Lord gives them perfect moments, but when you're somewhere for a week to 3 weeks, there's urgency, and that fear you have of presenting the gospel, it dissipates. And then finally, and again, and I hope you see the pattern here, you will expand the kingdom of Christ. And so that is what I have to share with you guys, and I hope that it's helped you to change your mind, and I hope you go and sign up for a mission trip right away. But thank you for being here, and thank you for listening to me.